We continue now at the top of Daf Tazayin Amid Beis Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 16b. On the previous summit, Rabbi Yochanan said that when it comes to a lav hanitik le'aseh, the way it works is bitlo v'lo bitlo. What that means is that if the person nullifies the possibility to do the aseh, so then there's going to be a punishment of malchus. But as long as there's a possibility to do the aseh, so then we say that there is no malchus. And Rabbi Yochanan said on the previous summit that there are only two cases where we have a lav hanitik le'aseh where it's even possible to nullify the possibility of doing the aseh. And the two cases are, first, the case of shiluach hakan. You're not supposed to take the young birds, and if you do so, you're supposed to send away the mother bird. It's possible to nullify the aseh of sending away the mother bird by killing the mother bird. So that's number one. And the second case is the case of ones, the case of rape. There's a halacha, the person rapes a woman, he has to marry the woman. If he divorces her, that's a violation of the los aseh, and then the aseh is he should remarry her. And over there also, Rabbi Yochanan says it's possible to be mevatel, to nullify the possibility even of doing that aseh of remarrying her. And how do you do that? You make a neder al das ravim. You make a neder on the knowledge, on the understanding of the public that you're not going to get any benefit from her, and then it would be a situation where you would not be allowed to remarry her. You essentially have nullified the possibility of doing the aseh. And the Gemara asked on the previous summit, but isn't there another case where we can say you can nullify the possibility of doing the aseh? Let's say by a mashkon, you're not supposed to take the mashkon. If you do take the mashkon, you're supposed to return it. And so what if you have a situation where the person you're returning it to, who was a ger, he was a convert, and he died, and there are no heirs, there's no one to return it to. Even if you would destroy the mashkon, there's no one to pay the money to. And the Gemara now continues and answers, Hasam over there, Gavra bar tashluminhu. Over there, the person really is somebody who is supposed to be paying. V'shibuda de ger hu de kapaka. It's just that the shibud of the ger, the ability of the ger to collect, that is no longer. And so therefore, in that situation, that's not considered to be a case of bitlo. But the Gemara continues, Va'ika peya, but what about by peya? The Rachman Amar, the pasuk says, Lo sichla pa'as v'gomer. It says that you're not allowed to reap the entire field. You have to leave over the corners. La'oni v'lager tazo vosam. You have to leave over the corners to the ani and to the ger, to the poor person and to the convert. And the idea over here is that would be after the avera of the lav. Let's say once you've reaped the entire field, so then there's an aseh that you can do, a lav hanitik aseh that you can leave it over to the poor. And there also it's possible to have bitlo. It's possible to nullify that aseh of giving it to the poor. As the Gemara now explains, the mashkachas la bekaimo v'lo kaimo. You can have that whether you hold kaimo v'lo kaimo. That's obvious, because if you hold kaimo v'lo kaimo, what that means is that Bezdin gives you an opportunity to fulfill the aseh. You come to court and the Bezdin says, give it to the poor. And then if you don't do that, so then there's going to be malchus. But not only that, bitlo v'lo bitlo, even according to Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that it goes by nullification, it's possible to nullify the possibility of doing that aseh of giving the payah to the poor. How is that possible? The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, the Masoras Hashas changes this to the Tanya. We learned in a Brisa, Mitzvahs Peya lahafresh min hakama. The mitzvah pay is to separate from the standing grain. Lohifresh min hakama, mafresh min ha'omer. If he didn't separate from the standing grain, then he separates from the sheaves. Lohifresh min ha'omer, mafresh min hakri. If he didn't separate from the sheaves, then he separates from the pile. Ad shelo meirach, before the pile is smoothed over. Mercha, once it's smoothed over, so then ma'aser v'nosen lo. So then he takes off ma'aser, but then again he gives that peya. And the point over here is that after that stage, there is no possibility to give the payah. And so therefore, there is an end to the possibility of giving the payah. It's possible to nullify it. If you get to the point where it's already isa, where it is dough, you won't be able to give that payah. So don't we have bitlo v'lo bitlo in that scenario by payah? And the Gemara continues and answers, Kid Rabbi Yishmael, no, it could be that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yishmael. The Yamar af mafresh mino isa, because Rabbi Yishmael says you can even separate payah from isa, from dough. But the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yishmael Nami, but one second, according to Rabbi Yishmael also, mashkachas la do'ach alisa, we can have a situation of nullification if he eats the dough. If he eats the dough, so it's impossible to give it to the poor, and that would be nullifying the possibility of doing the aseh. So we do have another example of bitlo v'lo bitlo by lav hanitik aseh. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather, Zos v'yod acheres ahar. Really, when we say Zos, that's going on the case of Shiluach Hakan, where it's possible to nullify the aseh, and v'yod acheres, and one more case is actually this case. Peya is actually the second case where it's possible to have a lav hanitik aseh of bitlo v'lo bitlo, and it's not possible by the case of rape. Aval ones lo, but by ones it's not possible. Why? Why can't he just make a neder al das ravim that will prevent him from remarrying her? No, dehecha amrinan, because where do we say al das ravim ein lo hafar, that if you make a neder al das rabim, there's no annulment. That's ledavar harashus. That's only for something which is something which it's voluntary. It's not a mitzvah. Avol dvar mitzvah, but for something that's a mitzvah, yesh lo hafara. Even if you make a neder al das rabim, it's not final. You are able to annul it, and therefore it is impossible to be mevatel, to nullify the possibility of remarrying her. You'll always have that possibility of remarrying her, and that's why bitlo velo bitlo does not apply in the case of rape. And the Gemara continues and says, Ki hadahu mikri dardaki. It was like that certain school teacher to have a pasha b'yanuke, that he was negligent with the children. Rashi says he was hitting them too much. Adre Ravacha, so Ravacha, he made a neder al das Ravin that this person cannot teach anymore. But via Hadre Ravina, but then Ravina restored him to his position, meaning it was possible to nullify that neder. Why? Because they couldn't find anybody that was as exacting in terms of teaching the students. And so you see, when it involves a mitzvah, you're able to annul even a neder that's al das Rabim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'ochel nevelos u'treifos shkatzim u'ramasim v'chulu." If somebody eats nevela and treifa, shkatzim and ramasim, the punishment is malchus. And the Gemara says, "Amar Rav Yehuda." Rav Yehuda says, "Hayman do'achel benisa." If somebody eats a benisa devei karva, Rashi says a benisa devei karva is tolas hanimsa bekruv. That would be a tolas. That's like a kind of a worm that is found within a cabbage. So if you eat that creature, malkinon lei mishum sheretz hashoretz al haaretz, that's, you're going to get malchus. For sheretz hashoretz al haaretz, you're going to get malchus for eating a sheretz that crawls on the earth. And the Gemara continues, there was a person who ate this creature, v'nagde Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda actually gave him malchus. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, achal potisa, let's say a person eats a potisa. Rashi says, bola sheretz hamayim, this is one of the shrutzim that's in the water, loka arba, so he's going to get 4 malchus. Rashi says, Loka arba shnei lavin ksuvin b'sheretz hamayim. There are actually 2 negative commandments by sheretz that's in the water. Echad b'taras kohanim, echad b'mishnah Torah. One is in Vayikra, one's in Dvarim. Ushnei lavin ksuvin b'sheretz dam. There's another 2 that are just written by general shrutzim. V'lo seshaktu es nafsho seichem b'chol hasheretz hashoretz. V'lo setamu b'hem u'mashma bein sheretz hamayim, bein sheretz haaretz. That's mashma all kinds of shrutzim. It doesn't matter if it's in the water or on the earth. Harei dalad, that's a total of 4. That's how Rashi understands the 4 malchus for potisa. And nemola, let's say a person eats a nemola loka chamesh, so that's going to be 5, mishum sheretz hashoretz al haaretz, because that is a sheretz that's on the earth. Rashi says nemola bola nemola chaya, that's an ant, holu birya shleimahi, since that's a full creature, achilasu b'cholshu, any amount is going to be a violation, veloka chamesh, and you're going to get 5 malchus. Shnei lavin aksuvim b'sheretz dam, you're going to get 5, you're going to get 2 rather, that are written by regular sheretz, kamosha pei Rashi, as I just explained above. Ushloja lavin aksuvim b'sheretz haaretz, b'taras kohanim, there are 3 lavin by sheretz haaretz, so that's when it comes to a nemola. And then sira, if a person eats a tzira, lo kashesh, so that's going to be 6 sets of malchus mishum sheretz ha'of, because that is a sheretz ha'of. And Rashi says, tzira lo kashesh chamesh mishum sheretz haaretz. You get the 5 of the sheretz haaretz because it's still a sheretz of the earth. V'yechad mishum sheretz ha'of, and 1 because it's a sheretz ha'of, because it flies, and so therefore it's going to be a total of 6. And we will note that a tzira is a wasp. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Achoy says, Hamashes nekav, if somebody delays going to the bathroom, over mishum lo seshakzu, he violates lo seshakzu, which is acting in a detestable manner. Amar Rav Bevi bar Abaye says, Haiman deshasi bekarna de'umna, if somebody drinks from the horn of a bloodletter, ka'avra mishum lo seshakzu, also he violates bal teshakzu. Amar Rava bar Rav Huna says, and some have the gear, so Rava bar Rav Huna says, Risek tisham nemolim, if a person crushes up 9 ants, and then he has 1 that's alive, so now he eats 1 that's alive, and also in total it's a total measure of a kazayas, lokevav, so he actually gets 6 malchus, hey mishum birya, 5 of them because he ate a whole ant, v'yechad mishum kazayas nevela, and then 1 he ate a kazayas of a nevela, of a dead animal. Rava Amar Rabbi Yochanan afilu shnayim v'hu, Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says even if it's 2 of them and that full ant. Rabbi Yosef Amar afilu echad v'hu, Rabbi Yosef says even 1 ant, even if it's 1 ant that's crushed up in 1 full ant. V'lo pligi, and they're not really arguing. Habarav v'habazutre, just depends if you're talking about big ants or small ones if they're very large. So it's possible it'll be a kazayis even if you just have 1 whole ant and 1 that is crushed up. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Achal tevel or ma'aser rishon, if a person eats tevel or ma'aser rishon, again, these are cases that they're gonna get malchus. That was ma'aser rishon where the truma wasn't taken off. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav says, Achal tevel shel ma'aser ani. What if he eats tevel and what was not separated was just the ma'aser ani? Loka, he is going to get malchus because that's still called tevel. You didn't separate ma'aser ani. The Gemara says, come on, who does that follow? Ki aitana detanya. It follows the tana of the following brisa. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Yachol lo yehi chayiv ela al hatevel shelo huram mimenu kalikar. One might think that you're only liable if you have tevel where you didn't take anything off the tevel. But huram mimenu truma gedola, let's say he took off truma gedola, v'lo huram mimenu ma'aser rishon, he didn't take off the ma'aser rishon, or ma'aser rishon v'lo ma'aser sheni, let's say he took off the ma'aser rishon and not the ma'aser sheni. V'afilu ma'aser ani, even if he just did not take off the ma'aser ani, minayin, from where do we know that you're chayiv? In that case, Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, lo sucha lechol b'sharecha, it says you can't eat in your gates, sul halan hu omer v'yachlu b'sharecha v'saveyu, and then further on it says they're going to eat in your gates and they will be satisfied. Malahalon ma'aser ani, just like over there, it's talking about ma'aser ani. Afkan ma'aser ani, so too over here, it's talking about ma'aser ani. Even if you don't take off ma'aser ani, that is considered to be tevel. V'yamar achmana lo suchal, that's what the pasuk says, lo suchal lechol, that you can't eat it in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef says, Kitanoi, let us suggest that this is actually a machlokas tanoim. If you don't take off ma'aser ani, is that still considered to be tevel? Rabbi Eliezer says, Ein tzarech likros es Hashem al ma'aser ani shel demai. Let's say you have ma'aser ani of demai. Demai is that grain which you're not sure whether you took off the ma'aseris, so you don't have to separate ma'aser ani in a situation of demai. The Chachamim omer, and the Chachamim say, and Rashi explains, Ein tzarech likros es Hashem. The Yochanan Kohen Gadol sholach b'chol gvul Yisrael v'roas amei haaretz chashudan al ma'aseris chutz mitruma gedola. Yochanan Kohen Gadol saw that all of the amei haaretz, it was not clear that they were taking off ma'aser. They were taking off truma gedola, but other than that, they didn't take off the ma'aser, or at least it wasn't clear if they took off the ma'asers. Amar lahem Yisrael ben bonai kashem shat truma b'misa kacha tevel b'misa. He said, my children, just like truma has a death penalty, so too tevel has a death penalty. Amar v'tikan halokech me'amaretz yafresh kol ha'ma'aser. So he made a takana that anyone who buys from an amaretz has to separate all the ma'asers, so ma'akvan liatzmo, and then he can hold that for himself. V'yochel ma'aser rishon, and in terms of ma'aser rishon, he's allowed to eat that sharei muter lazarim, because a non-kohen or a non-levi is allowed to eat ma'aser rishon, and it's only that the levi is trying to claim the ma'aser rishon as the owner, but here it's really a doubt, so he's allowed to eat it, he's allowed to keep it. U'ma'aser sheni ochlo b'Yerushalayim, he'll separate ma'aser sheni as well, just in case, and eat that in Yerushalayim. V'im shnas ma'aser ani, now let's say it's a year of ma'aser ani, some years you give ma'aser ani instead of ma'aser sheni. Nechleku Rabbi Eliezer v'chachamim, so on that we have here a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the chachamim. V'cham Rabbi Eliezer says, Delomi boy afrusha misafik, you don't even need to separate the ma'aser ani out of a doubt. Delot tzarech ela afilu likros olav es Hashem, you don't even need to be korei shem to say that this is ma'aser ani. V'lomer ma'aser ani shel krizeh yehi b'tzvono b'dromo nami lo tzarech, you don't even need to say that the ma'aser ani of this pile is in the north side of the pile or the south side of the pile. You don't even need to do that, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph.